And the last speaker is the Professor Takashi Ikegami from the University of Tokyo. His title and his title of talk is the Do Androids Ape. Please.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for attending this session, and thank you for me to give a chance to talk about this. So these are the members that I'm working with this Android. We call it Orta3. Then today I just focused on the major imitation game, or imitation stuff. Orta is Android which we started to work on this humanoid robot since 2016 with Hiroshi Ishiguro. Then this is the third version of Android. We have a 43 degrees of freedom, and then we freely program inside so-called brain, right? So our main focus is how to design the brain system inside Android. And I think the spirit of brain theory from our artificial life is how to, how to combine embodiment and perception inside the brain, right? So the perception is not the function of just a neural state, but also how to interact with environment. It's a very important thing, I think. So the structure of the talk is going to be like, first of all, how to program Orta3 to mimic a person in front of him, because Orta3 has a cameras in his eye, in her eyes, so that you can detect the humans pose in front of him. And next, consider a major imitation game between humans and androids. Okay. Then finally, because we have the Orta3 is version 3, so we now have Orta3 of them, right? So consider a mutual imitation game between two authors. So that's the third point that I'm going to talk about. And the motivation is that before deep learning gets popular, Helmholtz, the famous Helmholtz, as people know as a free energy principle, but the Helmholtz, I think it's the same name which gave the name to the free energy function in thermodynamics. He pondered the apparent stability of the the moving world, uncertainty because of the planetary movement, and then he discussed that the fact in dreams the perceived landscape may change in a realistic fashion during locomotion. And that's one of the things that I also want to discuss, because I think it's an interesting issue. Then the second thing is before Hinton wrote a paper on deep learning, that the famous paper with Need and Zimmel, that he discussed that the Helmholtz machines, which the machines based on Helmholtz principle, is that through many cycles of sensing and dreaming, that converging into this internal image of fluctuating environment or fluctuating world. So I think the basic principle is that the world environment is fluctuating. And so here is the system, try to perceive the world and try to make a model of the external world and how it's going to be possible. The environment, when I say this, is including its self-actions. So when you do something to the environment, and then we also have to make a model of the environment, right? So this is the most complicated part, but the circuit we put in the Android is like this. So basically, we have two modes, which one is memory-based, the other one is reactive. The memory-based thing, and then automatic mimic capacity. As John Smith gave his talk that how to make a self-simulator, but this self-simulator is a very simple one. it's a vision-based one. And also we have a spontaneous dynamics, which is given by Ikegami neurons with STDP, spike neural learning systems. So these are the 4 big issues. And then there is a mode selectors. Whether you go to immediately imitate the people's pose in front of him, or maybe we go into the memory state and seeking for which one is the best pose that can be used for imitating the behavior of him or the people in front of him. Yeah. So when you in the mode selector, the selecting memory and then that execute in the altered state, but the reactive mode, then you can just go to the autonomic capacity and then just execute. So the memory is generated by the previous own behaviors. Just memorize his poses, and then in order to imitate the behavior in front of him, we can just react to imitate the human's pose in front of him. But quite often that he cannot do it nicely because this hardware is very imperfect, so that he has to utilize the memory storage and then picking up one of the best poses that he did in the past. And the goodness of the imitation is evaluated by the optical flow around the figure or around the images of himself. That's the self-imitation was coming into play with. So when you do the simulate self-imitation and then calculate optical flow around himself and then comparing it with the actual images coming from the camera, and if the optical flow is the same, then we say, okay, this the imitation pose that the alter is going to do is good, so that we can just execute. But if it's not, then we have to go into the memory storage and picking up the most reliable, most similar pattern that the author did in the past. So that's what the capacity is. That's what the structure of the Orta 3. So this one is what we did in Düsseldorf, but when you raise your hands and then Orta raises, right? And then when the goes this, but then Orta try to imitate, right? But as you see, this is very imperfect, right? It's a lot of fluctuation is coming out. And then he cannot, actually follow when the people is moving too fast. But I don't know whether you notice this, but sometimes Ota is mimicking people's behavior, but people also are mimicking Ota's behavior. And it's very much spontaneously happens. And then when we did this in the museum, as John said, that sometimes when we computed transfer entropy is always from is in a normal phase. Its transfer entropy is from human to Ota because Ota is imitating human's behavior. But sometimes it's reversed. When the Ota did something strange, and then people try to imitate spontaneously or unconsciously imitate Ota's behavior, so that the transfer entropy is reversed. So now the information flow is coming from Ota to human being, right? So that's why we thought it was interesting. So why not? We just do imitation game, right? So I told the people that why don't you just imitate Ota's behavior, and then Ota is also imitating humans' behavior, so that mutual imitation is coming up. So this guy is now imitating Ota, and then Ota is also like imitating human behavior. Well, initially we think that maybe we go to just a fixed point state, right? But actually it's not. They're just moving, constantly and then generating different types of behavior eventually, right? Eventually, but they never get to the fixed point, but they just moving again and again and creating a new behavior, seems like. So we did with two authors imitating with each other. And it's different, right? I mean, the behavior is not different. It's not same. And I think, imitation game between human and Ota is more vivid and active than comparing with Ota 3 and Ota 2. So maybe because the embodiment is different, that's why we thought. So we are using two-person using Oculus Quest, and then when you see through the Oculus Quest, that you can see other one's face, but it's Ota's face. And then when you see your hands, yeah, but what you can see is not your hands, but Ota's hands, right? So this is kind of possession. It's possessed by the human. Ota, right? Ota is possessed by the human, and then other Ota is also possessed by the human, right? But when you try to imitate other one's behavior through Ota's eyes and Ota's body, right? The other one will also do the same thing. So in this case, I don't know whether you see the differences, but see, so I skip this. So in order to see the differences, we computed UMAP, it's a uniform manifold approximation of the degrees of freedom. We have a time series, and then projecting onto the 2D space, and then see whether this behavior is complex or just simple, and then repeating the same behavior, or maybe they are just increasing the complexity or diversity. So this pattern is from Ota 3 against human, and this pattern is Ota 3's behavior against other Ota, which is Ota 2. So it looks like Ota 3 generates more diverse behavior when they are playing with the human. But when they are playing with Ota 2, other Android, then their behavior is relatively not complex. And again, this is Ota 3 against the programmed Ota, right? And then this one is against the possessed Ota. So this one is possessed by the human, right? And Ota 3's behavior against possessed Ota. And this is Ota 3's against the human behavior, the behavior against programmed Ota. Again, even though the embodiment is the same, but if it's possessed by the human, then you can increase your diversity of actions. So maybe because there are a bunch of reasons that we can come up with, but even though it's a mutual imitation game, still whether the human mind is behind Ota's body is important to increase the diversity of the behaviors. So the discussion is that this one is coming from the idea which when I was discussing with Tom Forrest, he couldn't come today, but he said Mike Tomasello wrote a very interesting paper which I should know, was written in, he wrote the paper in 1996 or 3, that whether the apes can ape or not, right? And then to this question that he said, only when it's trained by the human, either formally or informally, to imitate, then he can do it. That's what he said. And all the three trained by the human can generate a rich diversity than android mimicking each other. So we need human to teach how to behave. I don't know what is transferred from human to android or transferred to ape, but certainly there's an information flow from human to android or ape to have more rich behaviors. And then I think while the apes are sensitive to the goal of the action, which is emulation learning, means that apes know what to do, but he cannot imitate at styles of action, right? But the human infants can switch between goal-oriented, emulation learning, and then also simple imitation of, or the style of imitation of a style of action. So the other three can imitate the style of action by maybe it's the ontogenetic ritualization or something, but cannot switch to the goal-focused imitations. Means that he cannot simply imitate, or he cannot simply understand the intention of the human being. That's why the imitation between android and android versus android human is different. So based on this experiment, I'm focusing, how to understand, how to make an artificial mind, how to connect with, embodiment and human mind. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Takashi. Any questions or comments? Lana, please.
Yes, thank you, Takashi, for your talk. I'm curious to see the dynamics of the human, how the dynamics of the human will change. So if human and human are imitating each other, and human and androids, like will the diversity of human motion, will it decrease or increase or stay the same?
That's a very interesting question, but we didn't look into this. To answer that kind of very interesting question, I think humans' behavior is also constrained in one way or other because it's not natural,
But I think maybe the opposite could also happen. Like if you and me are imitating each other, it's very easy to find just one pattern and we just do the same pattern. But if it's the androids, maybe I'm forced to do something different.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I better check it. That's an interesting question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Unemi-sensei, please.
Yeah, I'm interested in motivation of the imitation game. So did you consider anything about the motivation of such a play?
Yeah, I think making a human mind or human consciousness state from scratch is very difficult. But I think when the machines or android is interacting with human, then mind is transferred from a human to robot or human to the machine. So I think mind can be copied, or you can say mind is contagious like a virus. That's kind of my hypothesis, and I want to prove it. Once you are interacting with machines and the machine has a rich capability inside, then it becomes like yourself. And then we also, exchanging our mindset when we are communicating with each other. It's not, mind is not, strictly captured in our body, but it's leaking outside of our body, like what we call leaky mind. So that the mind is, partially exchanging with each other. That's what our communication is about, our society is about. that's the behind the motivation of this work.
No. I won't ask you to the motivation of robot or motivation inside of the ape or inside of the human and the inside of Android. So yeah, we are sometimes we in childhood we are playing with our friends with such an imitation game because we can enjoy it.
So, in that sense, because ontogenetic behavior of a human infant is imitation, right?
Yeah.
Imitation is the first action, I think, when what we can find in the people's developmental processes. But also when we see very very primitive animals like Tetrahymena or some other little creatures, they tend to imitate each other. So that's, I thought maybe imitation is a very primitive but a very important elementary actions. I think many people have been discussing with respect to this one, but once again we have to think about what's the function of imitation is another motivation here.
Yeah, and then I also interested in some relation between from a talk, some goal thing. So the from the viewpoint of reinforcement learning, so goal is something like acquire as much positive reinforcement as possible. And then such an imitation play is also we can receive the positive reinforcement inside our brain. So I'm not sure whether it's how much is important, but maybe such kind of the positive reinforcement might be useful. Helpful.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, for the moment we do only have like a local learning, like what we call STDP here, because it's a pulsing neural network. But as you said, you know, reinforcement might be also quite interesting. Yeah, I'll have to think about it. Yes, thank you so much.
Any other questions? Just Lana left the comments on the chat, and then do you want to say something about this?
Sorry. Yes, sorry for advertising myself, but Takashi, you talked about like the contagion of the mind, the leaky mind, and we are organizing this contest where you have to write a very short explanation for fake news, and the fake news is that some living organism got infected by a computer virus, and the other possibility is some computer got infected with a biological organism, and you just have to write an explanation. So yeah, I thought it was a bit related.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And any other questions? I have one. The imitation is a crucial activities to offload the human mind to the robots.
Yes, I think so.
And any other possible activities, not just imitation, but
well, actually, you know, maybe me and you share the same information, but Turbathen in Edinburgh University, he after he studied imitation game between infants and mother, he switched to study communication musicality, right? So it's not a periodic thing, but every communication has a musicality inside the communication rhythm. So it's not a repeated rhythm, but it's sometimes it becomes strong, but sometimes it's becomes very weak. So it's more like a storytelling in a communication systems. So it's more structured. So the structure, what we can say, system versus system coupling. So coupling is not just a synchronization, but it's more like a structural coupling that we have to think about. The imitation is just a preliminary version of this, and then what we have to think about is more what kind of musicality that we can find in human communication things. So that's the main goal is communication musicality is something that I would really like to understand.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe the co-creation or improvisation or something.
Improvisation. Yeah. Improvisation.
Yeah.
It's not just a language, but the language is if the language is secondary, and then if our body action for this schema, I mean the body images, based on the body images, that what kind of information that we can exchange is something that we have to think more carefully. That's the thing that I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Takashi.
Thank you.